You ready?
I will.
This time I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Walsh. Here. Commissioner Doherty.
Here.
Commissioner Strack.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Meyer.
Here.
Commissioner Thacker.
Here.
Present.
At this time, I would like to open the floor for public input. If there's something that you'd like to speak about tonight that's not on the agenda, something outside of the agenda, please step to the podium. You want to talk for this hearing tonight, correct?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so
I ju-
we'll do that part later.
Let me introduce myself. I'm the only
Hang on,
friend.
Jim. Yeah, that's okay. We'll have you introduce
Oh.
yourself in just a few minutes.
Okay.
Thank you. To the commissioners, Kevin is here in place tonight for Kelly, who happens to be attending the Cub game this evening. So Kevin's just so thrilled to be here, I'm sure, instead of in Kelly's place at the game.
Maybe we'll see her on TV later.
Yeah, exactly. At this time, I'd like the committee members to consider the approval of the meeting minutes from the September 20th of 2017 regular meeting. If there's any changes or revisions, please let me know. Otherwise, we're looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Sue, do I have a second?
Second.
Hello, Mr. Thacker. On the second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Walsh.
Abstain.
Commissioner Doherty.
Yes.
Commissioner Strack.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer.
Yes.
Commissioner Thacker.
Yes. Excellent, thank you. At this time, I'd like to open file Z916. This is a public hearing for a use variance at 3806 West Waukegan Road. The applicant and property owner is Casey and Danuta Peace-Corps, 3520 North Pulaski Road, apartment number 304, Chicago, Illinois, 60641. Again, the requested action is a use variance from Article 4 residential districts to allow a two-family dwelling on the subject property. And again, that subject property is 3806 West Waukegan Road. I do have the return receipts for the certified mailing, a signed affidavit, and the publication notice from the Northwest Herald here on that file. Thank you, Doug. At this time, would you please raise your right hand? You too, sir.
Both.
Thank you, yes. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Great. Please state your name and address for the record.
Casey Peace-Corps. Sorry, I forgot my address sheet.
My name is John Perda. I'm just trying to interpret whoever.
Great. Can we have your address too, please?
5011 East Lakeshore Drive, Wonder Lake, Illinois.
Great, thank you. Dorothy, do you have Mr. Peace-Corps' address?
Yeah, 3250 North Pulaski Road, apartment 304.
Excellent, thank you. Please tell us why you're here tonight.
Sorry?
Tell us why you're here tonight.
Dlaczego tu jesteś dziś?
No, chcę ten dom przerobić, bo jest jednorodzinny albo apartamentowy, żeby był dwurodzinny dom, żeby zrobić to legalnie.
He's trying to change it from one family house to two family.
Great, thank you so much. Staff, please give us your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject property, and just for clarification purposes, the applicant, there's a misspelling, it's Meyer on it's Casey and Danuta, D-A-N-U-T-A is the correct spelling on the agenda. It was incorrect on the agenda, correct is D-A-N-U-T-A, I apologize for that. It is zoned RA1, attached residential, and a two-family dwelling is simply one building with 2 dwelling units. So, which is what the applicant is on the property currently. The subject property is a 2-flat. It looks like a house. It has a unit on the first floor. There's a 1-car garage, which is used by one of the 2 units. And then there's a common driveway. It's a little bit wider, which I guess both units may use the driveway, but you know, it could easily accommodate multiple cars. There are separate entrances for each of the 2 units. The entrance to the first floor unit is on the south side of the home, and the entrance to the second floor unit is on the east side of the home. So one unit is on top of the other. So on RA1 zoning, you're allowed to have 2 units on the same lot, but you can't have one on top of the other. So that's why the applicant is applying for a use variance to allow the unit over unit. So they're not asking to change what's there, they're just asking to become compliant by getting the variance to do that. So to make it become legal. And the property has been unoccupied for more than 30 consecutive days, which means that they have to become compliant. Otherwise, it has to revert back to RA1. So the only way to use it in compliance with RA1 would be to use it as a single-family house, would be 1 unit, or they could essentially tear the house down and build 2 units, but they'd have to be side by side with a common vertical wall, not 2 units, one over the other. So they're obtaining the variance so they wouldn't have to do that. They did that on purpose to fix the units up, to make them look a lot better, to get them ready to sell. We had a case like this similar in the past. This property is very, it's similar to the other one, but a little bit different. If you look at it, it's very architecturally pleasing. It backs up to commercial. It's within walking distance of a lot of commercial areas. It backs up to the historic Count's house. It's within that same main Waukegan Road historic area. The Form E, which governs the criteria for approval for the planning and zoning purposes, to consider requests such as this. I apologize, we got a new sound system. It's literally brand new. Our practical difficulties related to the property, particular hardship, reasonable return, unique circumstances not altering the local character or consistency with the comprehensive plan, meaning that these are the criteria that the planning and zoning utilizes to say, should this variance be granted for this particular property. This area of the city is very unique. There is a section of property zoned RA1, and they are similar to this. And a lot of these houses were built at the turn of the century. They're very historic. This is a very nice looking house if you've driven by it. And it looks like a traditional 2-flat. But you may not, it also looks like a single family house. You may not even know it's a 2-flat unless you see the 2 entrances, which they provided a nice layout. You can see where the entrances are. You can see the inside. They've taken very good care of it. Maintaining the RA zoning and approving a use variance to allow a 2-family dwelling makes more sense because it allows the preservation of these buildings in the older part of town. It allows more density, which I think is appropriate. It's right next to a commercial area. It maintains the integrity of the area. So in staff's opinion, the recommendations to approval of the use variance at 3806 West Waukegan to allow a 2-family dwelling. And staff finds that the requirements table 32A of the zoning ordinance have been satisfied. Take any questions of planning and zoning commission may have at this time.
Thank you, Doug. At this time, I'd like to open the floor to questions or concerns from the commissioners.
Pretty much mirrors what we saw a month or so ago, really. We brought that up at the time. We may be seeing more of these, and it's just
It's time.
yeah, and it's happening now. It's a very nice looking home.
Yes. Yes, it is.
At this time, I'd like to open the public portion of the meeting. Jin-Yun, you want to speak?
Me?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please state your name and address for the record.
Oh, my name is Ginny McNamara, and I live 3804 West Waukegan Road.
Okay?
I'm his neighbors. It sounds like already you guys have committed for two single-family homes, two family homes already. It sounds like it.
What Mr. Thacker said was that a month ago, there was another petitioner here on the same street with the same issue.
Yeah, it sounds like you already committed it.
Well, so that particular property that Roger mentioned is actually, we did approve that one before.
Oh, well, I don't.
So tonight is about this property.
Okay. What I was concerned was the owner was renting, and then he was actually 14 to 15 people lived there for a long time. Okay. Downstairs was sometimes usually 7 to 8. Upstairs was 6 to 7. So 42 people lives most of the time. And then they have a visitors, so there'll be 2 or 16 people live there. But I do say that I know that he can rent it for single family home. Everybody else is a single family home and has been. And then so my point is that I want to keep it as a single family home. If a two family homes, I don't know what the number will go up, but I have to say that when the previous tenant, they were very good people, and then clean, and they're peaceful people. Was wonderful to have as neighbors. But he had a tenant that before. Some of them are not so good. It's not so good. It's bad people. They had BB guns and shooting neighbors. And we have to call police on a weekly basis. And we requested to City Hall to city to put the street light. I don't know, Mr. Casey even know that because we didn't tell him though. It has been going on. So my main concern is that many people live there. We might have more disturbance and the more police work policeman comes out. And then also nowadays, who knows, all the drugs, the guns, things going on. I don't know what my neighbors will be. You see, that was my main concern. But the previous, the tenant, that I have no complaints, you know, I mean, they were wonderful people. We were lucky, but we don't know. We were not so lucky. But not only that, it has been single family home for a long time, and also there are so many people live there. We didn't have any problems. Why don't we keep it that way? That's my point.
Can I address that?
Please.
So there's two things here. There's a zoning, and then there sounds like the code enforcement type, and some police issues here. So if there's a rental property in the city, or any rental property, they're required to register the property through a rental registration program. And part of the reasoning behind that is if there's an emergency, you know, that the owner needs to be contacted, they don't live on site, we can contact them. But the other thing is that if there's, as you say, 14, 15 people living there, you know, the way to determine how many people can live in a particular unit is we strictly do it by building code. So on this application, which I'd be happy to give you a copy, you know, and on the rental registration program form, you have to put on the size of the bedrooms, the bathrooms, you know, kind of what the layout is. So we know that one of the units is a 2-bedroom, one's a 1-bedroom, and so we can preliminarily get an idea of how many people should be in there, you know. So that's a code enforcement type issue. If we have to look into something like that further, we have that ability to do that. Now, number of cars.
Yes, that's another one.
Okay, so that, you can't, zoning and number of cars, that's another code enforcement issue. So that can be dealt with, but not through a zoning. So we, you know, you can park on the street, but you can't park all night. You know, you certainly can call the police on when you have police issues. So there's kind of three separate issues here. There's the zoning issue of using the property as a two-flat. Then there's the code enforcement of potentially too many people or too many cars or that type of thing. And then there's the police issue of people are shooting off BB guns or doing something inappropriate. So all those are handled differently. Tonight's consideration is, should this be considered as a two-flat? Now, the adjacent properties are to the east, to the west, and to the south. They're all zoned the same thing, RA1. They're all.
What that means then?
I'm sorry?
RA1 means what that means?
That's attached residential, same as what this gentleman's house is zoned. Now, you can have a single-family residence there, but a lot of these homes were built as two-unit homes, meaning you can't just have a two-unit home. You have to have separate entrances. There are building code requirements.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way is there are ways to address your concerns with the code enforcement, but it's not the number of people, the guns, and the other stuff is not through the zoning method.
I got you.
So the question tonight is should this be used as a two-flat and given the variance for that or not?
Because I understand what you're saying. So my main concern was that the concern was so many people there. Now I have to deal with it. Maybe they steal something too, you know what I mean? So those things are the parking space, and that the neighbors were concerned. Those things are concerned. But I know you're talking about zoning issues. That's
Right,
what I'm
parking
saying.
something that zoning, they're required to have a certain amount of parking spaces too. That's a zoning type issue unless they park on the grass. Can't park on the grass, that's a code enforcement issue. But any, you know, if they're granted a two-family dwelling, you know, they have to meet the parking requirements. They have to meet all the zoning
Yes.
or they're in violation.
Yeah.
So I guess if it's recommended, if it's approved, and these issues you speak of still happen, to contact the city and they'll be addressed at the appropriate level, either code enforcement, police, or zoning.
Oh, code. The parking space would be code.
Code, if it's, they have to have a certain number, like they can't block the sidewalk, they can't park on the grass, that's code issues, yes.
Well, we didn't have any problems with that because the tenants were superb people. They were really good people. I know Mr. Casey, he's very picky about it, and he maintains it, like you said, maintains the building, and I have no complaints about that one. He's very good at it, you know.
So that sounds like most of your concerns are non-zoning related, they're mostly.
Well, it is a tool, in a way that
Yeah.
if I can, you know, what I like, I said, single family home. That's
Okay.
what I wanted. But, you know, that you guys, you look at into, you decide it. So I don't have any complaint. The tenant before they had was excellent. He had like 10 years. They're good people. And I don't mind having, they live, 20 people lived there. I like to have them as a people there. They're good people. But, you know, but we don't know. We're so lucky next
We
time.
can't have 20 people.
What I'm saying is just an example, give you, I
Right,
like
I
it.
understand, and I guess that's for this body to recommend if they wanna maintain the two-flat, or they don't wanna grant that variance.
Yeah, so I understand what you guys do with the zoning, that's
Yes,
what you
yes.
focus on it.
Yep.
So I understand what you're saying, so, but I just told you what I.
Yes,
Sure.
yep.
And Doug, just to answer the last item, do you know how many buildings on that street? I mean, I know we had one other adjacent property here a month ago or so come for the exact same. There are multiple units on Waukegan that are multifamily. There are 2-unit buildings on the street. This is not the only one.
Yeah, because to me, it's better for me to come here, understand what you guys doing it, because then other than that, I have no idea what you guys doing, what the reason, and
Sure.
then now, the Mr. Casey, I know he's pretty good at it. So, I do understand some parts of it, so I had a little bit, peace of mind on it.
But if he sells the property,
That I don't know, that's what I'm
then you
saying.
don't know, but at least you have an avenue to go to address a potential problem if there was one.
But I wish it just doesn't happen that way.
Right,
What I'm
right.
saying, he still can, my point is, he still can rent it place the way it is, as a single family home. And I don't.
He could still run it as a single family home, yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
So why it has to be changed, that is my main concern. That's the one that, then everything gonna be okay, you know?
Well, he's got 2 units in there now, and all he's asking is to continue to rent it as 2 units.
Yeah, but that's his, his benefit, what I'm saying, you see.
If he were to rent as a single family, then he's talking remodeling the whole house to make it 1 unit instead of 2. It's got separate entrances, it's got 2 electric services, it's got 2,
Well, he was renting before to have family homes. But you rented 2 people upstairs, downstairs.
right, that's what he wants to do. He just wants to do what he was continuing to do, but because he has to comply, it's been vacant, so he has to comply with the zoning. So he doesn't want to change what's there now.
Oh, I understand it, I can understand, but my point is, well, that's what he wants, that's what I'm saying. What he wants, I'm just telling you what I want.
Yes.
Okay, so, but I can understand I understood what you're saying, understood what you're saying, so I have a pretty good idea,
Right.
but, well, what can I say?
It could be a rental though as a single family house too.
That's what I'm saying, but that it's not, I think, it's not up to me, I can see, so that's sometimes I get frustrated, you know what I mean? Yeah, because it's just that, it's not up to me, so I'm just telling you. But I do understand what you're saying, that Waukegan Road had a commercial,
Area adjacent to
yeah,
it.
that's what.
But there are avenues to address, I'm not saying that the things you're saying we're dismissing.
Yeah,
There
I
are
know.
ways that's not acceptable to shoot guns
Yeah,
and
because
do.
the concern is that when you rent it, because of sometimes, we were lucky this time, but the people were nasty, it's a bad people, it's just bad. And then the policeman, it was a little danger, the guns, So we have to call police every weekly basis. I don't think even we told Mr. Casey about it. I don't
And
think
we
so.
have to know that, and that's why we have to work with.
Yeah, because it was so bad that, but sometimes the kids, some tenant, they make a racial statement on me too, but that doesn't bother me, but some people are just like that, But he kept the property so nice, and I have no complaints about it, and then that I can tell you, but, so, whatever it is, it's up to you guys, but I just told you what I.
I'd be happy to give you my card on the way out if you want, and then we can.
Oh, no, it's okay.
No, that's what we're here for.
We'd be happy to.
Certain times I don't know really what, but the thing is that I have sometimes a problem nowadays more so, and I have a very little about confidence about the government people, you know what I mean? They don't do what is right for the people.
But that's why I want you to call, because that's what we want to do what's right.
Sometimes that's what I think you should do. I don't have to tell you, you guys know the people.
But sometimes we don't know, because if you're saying there's 20 people, how are we supposed to know that?
Oh, that is true. Yeah, I will call you then, I will call you. But see, the thing is that is true. I know what you're saying, but until issue comes up, then we'll tell you. We don't want to make waves. They're peaceful people. Why do you have to?
But sometimes, we have to hear, because we can't be every place all the time.
Yeah, because then they're peaceful, good people. We don't want to make any whatever. But when that bad thing happens, we have to call the police. You know.
Right.
Then even we didn't tell the owner because we didn't want to bother with it. We don't know how to, because the people lives in that house. We don't want to go into that house and asking the owner's phone number. We don't know, what they're gonna do, so that was the problem, but
Well, and Doug has that information, so
That's
when
why
you
we
have an issue,
require- yeah.
if you call Doug,
I
he
hope
knows
we're
how,
not gonna have it.
well, and he would know how to reach any property owner.
Because
so-
then we deal with the property owner at that point,
Yeah, we
we
did
don't
once,
deal with the tenant. If some crime going on, yeah, we deal with the tenant, but we also deal with the property owner.
Oh,
So that's why you call us.
well, I tell them it's for education, I don't have a very confident, but McHenry, I don't have complaints so far. Because this, I don't know what the previous mayor, she did a wonderful job. I love McHenry, I really do love, and I don't know, I love America begin with it. I love McHenry, look at the Riverwalk, and then every season they changed it, they put something, the flowers. Even the guy put the water in the flower, we can't believe it. And then what the auto show they have, and now the new theater they have it. I mean, all I see improvement.
That's the goal, I mean, we're trying to improve it, but
Yes,
we
I can
have
see
to know,
it.
that's
Then
why.
look at the road walk on 31, and then this the recreation center. I couldn't tell you enough good things about it, McHenry. I hope this new mayor does a good job too. I don't know who that guy is, but I hope he does.
We hope so too.
Yeah, because
I'm gonna, you take my cards, just give them to all
I'm
your
telling
neighbors,
you.
because we have to know the issues, we have to
A
know.
whole stack of cards.
No, I mean,
Pass them out.
I tell you that because one thing I tell you, I never got involved with anything. Well, this election, it woke me up. These people are crazy. The government people, they're nuts, actually. They don't do anything what is right. And I'm going after them too,
But I work for the government.
I lived in America for 30 years. I love America.
Ms. Ms. McNamara, I appreciate your comments, but we need to keep it to what's happening with this house.
Okay.
Okay?
My speech is over. I
Well,
explained.
please call if you have a problem,
Thanks for listening.
that's my
Thank you.
point.
But it's good to know what you guys doing, and
Thank
I
you.
have a pretty
Great.
good idea, so that's the one that comforts me.
Great,
Thank
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McNamara, would you like to speak as well? Please raise your right hand, sir.
Sure.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
So help me God.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name is Thomas McNamara, and I live at 3804 Waukegan, which is next door to this home.
Sure.
The only comment I wanted to make is, if you were to go on Waukegan Road and look at that house and our house, they look like carbon copies. So my point is, it looks like to me that house next door was modified to accommodate two families. Then after that has been done, now we're saying, well, it's all set up for two families, so we ought to use it like that. So the point is, it was made into a two-family home when it was a single-family residence.
Well, it was zoned in 1986 when the map was created, so if it was done so, I don't know exactly when, but it was at least 20-some, 30 years ago. I don't know exactly
Well,
when.
I've lived there since 1982, and, it was already like that.
Yes.
It was a two-family or it was a one?
It was a single family for a long time.
There was a single family.
There was
for a long
one
time.
woman living in the
Yeah,
house.
was Mary, she lived.
When I moved in, there was one woman living in that house.
With 2 units or 1 unit?
I'm sorry,
Was there 2 units or 1?
I don't hear too.
Was it 2 units
Was
or
there-
1 unit?
Yeah, was there two separate places, or was it just a single-family house for one person?
Well, I never went into her house, so I couldn't tell you that. But all I know is that she lived there all alone. I knew her.
But that's the big question, though. I mean, they're not changing what was there, and it wasn't done recently. It's not like they did this overnight. This has been this way
She
for.
was living by herself, so it was a single unit, I think. That was what.
But with another unit above it or below it. That was vacant.
No, this
No, I
was
don't
one
think
house.
so. One house.
It was one house.
It
Well,
was
and
just
again,
like
that unfortunately, we can't prove that it was one house that long ago, and so tonight's issue is what the property's been since this
Oh.
property owner's owned it.
Okay.
And I believe, he's owned this property for,
1994?
yeah, so a considerable amount of time. It has been a 2-unit building.
Yes, it was.
And that's what we're addressing tonight.
Gotcha.
In 1982, I'm not sure what it was, but today we have to address what has been in this owner and for that amount of time.
Well, it was a single family.
Yes, it was. It was identical with our house.
Yeah, it's like a carbon
Carbon
copy.
copy.
Gotcha.
The front has a porch put on it, but you look at, it's even got the same slate shingles on all the buildings.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Anyone else like to speak on this matter? Seeing no one else in the gallery, I will close the public portion of the meeting. Turn it over for additional comments, questions, or concerns from the commissioners.
I have one question, and it concerns this one and the one we did 2 months ago. This 30-day thing, is that gonna go away anytime? Because that seems to be the problem with these things. If these things are vacant for 30 days, all of a sudden you have to rezone them.
That's a nonconformity, that's in our nonconformity section of our zoning ordinance. I
There
mean,
we
we
go.
could amend that if you want, I
It
mean,
seems to be kind of just an arbitrary thing. 30 days, the house is vacant.
I mean, we
and
can
it's
make
gotta
it
go to
60, but that's
Why
arbitrary
don't
too.
you just get rid of
I
it?
mean,
I mean, the house is a 2-flat when it goes vacant, so why does it revert back to a 1-flat? Did somebody just have some idea?
well, I think that's why we're going through the next part of the agenda too.
Okay.
I just
I think
brought
that's
that up.
part of the review of what we need to do and looking forward, for sure.
Okay, fine.
I'm not sure what the magic number days is, to be honest with you.
Any other additional questions or concerns?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Meyer?
And let me read it. If I can find my page. I'm almost there. I will make a motion for the approval of a use variance at 3806 Waukegan Road to allow a 2-family dwelling. Staff finds all requirements in table 32A of the zoning ordinance have been satisfied, and the 3 bullet attachments are included in the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Down here.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Additional questions or concerns? Ms. Miller, do you have a concern?
No, my only comment was, I think it's good to look at these units, particularly in Old Town, because some of them have been hodgepodged and band-aid, and I think it's important that we do look at their zoning and make sure that they are at least some compliance.
Excellent, thank you. With the motion on the table, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Doherty,
Yes.
Commissioner Strack,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
Commissioner Thacker,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Excellent. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to close
City
file
Council.
Z916.
On November 6th. This will go to city council. This will go to city council for final approval. This is a recommending body, so this will go back to city council for final decision on November 6th, 7 PM here. That's correct, right, Dorothy?
Dorothy, is that correct, November 6th?
Yes,
7 PM.
7 PM.
yes. He does not answer.
And you can, all those meetings are, you can come back to that and speak at that one too.
Do we have to be here, or he's gotta be here?
I would have somebody here,
Mhm.
you know, to answer questions if they come out.
Will he be notified by mail or anything?
Yeah, we'll send you an agenda a few days ahead of time. And you're more than welcome to come too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
At this time, I would like to turn the floor over to Doug for the review of our maps that were included in your packet.
The big maps.
I like
So this is the ongoing process of looking at our land use maps and ordinances. So in this part of the discussion, I wanted to accomplish just a few things. One, just some of this is overview of planning processes and ordinances, just a general background, because I think as we move forward, you know, the more people understand, you know, it can't hurt. So the first bullet point is discuss planning and zoning general statutory responsibilities. You know, I put on as an attachment, you know, what this body, it often comes up, what are you responsible for? And I tried to boil it down to prepare, recommend comp plans, amendments to comp plans. You review subdivision plats in accordance with the Plat Act, which is a statutory act that governs subdivision. You can plan within a mile and a half beyond your corporate limits, which is your extraterritorial planning jurisdiction. So, you know, you look 1.5 miles beyond your boundaries or your basically your zoning map or your corporate limits, just to plan for the future. You're also charged with public improvements as it relates to subdivision, dedication of land, park, school land donation, reviewing zoning ordinances, amendments, text amendments, and cases like this for variances, and then subdivision plat review and amendments, variations. So that's the basic responsibilities as outlined under the planning and zoning enabling legislation in the state law.
Before you move on, does anybody have any questions with that? Just want to make sure as we hit these bullet points, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to speak up. Sorry.
No, it's okay. And then the overview of the major land use and transportation changes. I think moving forward, as we look at the existing land use, the future land use, and the zoning map, and the comp plan, the zoning ordinance, we need to look at what's changed since we updated these things the last time. So the future land use map, which was included, has not been updated since 2005. The comprehensive plan text was updated. That's the few pages I included. The comp plan and development policies was updated in 2008. So I think the best way to look at that is the document that I provided the last time, and look at the bullet points of that document, the global overview, the regional placement, the new normal, technology, transportation, demographic, socioeconomic changes, social media. We have a lot of areas on our plan that are zoned for low density housing. Is that realistic? People are moving back downtown. With planning, everything seems to come full circle. You know, people move out to the suburbs, then they go back to the city. So, land use and travel trends. Are people driving more? Are cars gonna be driving themselves? Transit, so that's another one. Housing and workforce, that's another big one to consider. And then all the minor bullet points under all those categories. That's why I'm gonna include this sheet under every meeting we have and provide more information on the topics as we move forward. But those are the kinds of the things that I mean of the changes that have occurred to consider when we're updating these maps. Does anybody have any questions on those?
Not on those specific points, but you mentioned we have boundary agreements with
Yes.
various.
Yep.
If we're gonna do this, we're gonna need copies of those boundary agreements and see what restrictions we have on planning.
Yep, I'm gonna get to that one.
Okay.
The third one is reviewing the existing future land use maps in relationship to the zoning map and the comprehensive plan, and the zoning and subdivision ordinances. So to try to kind of, I tried to kind of put a little math equation here. Your existing condition map, or this map here is a core downtown sub-area map, which is just a section of town. The existing land use is basically what is there now. You know, is it a building? What is it used for? Is it vacant? And then this blank map is just is a blank map. It's the layers are turned off on the GIS, but if you look in here, there is an existing land use map of the city. So that really should reflect what is on the property at this point. That should be a fact, it should be a use, and it should be something that's really non-negotiable. It's your existing condition. Your future land use map is really, that's your policy document. That's the big colored map with that goes beyond your boundaries, the 1.5 miles. That's what do we want to see in the future on this property? Do we want to see residential, commercial? Do we want to see industrial? That's your policy document. Your zoning map is the regulatory version of your future land use map, if you want to put it that way. So if you want to see residential, you want to see single family residential. So what kind of single family? Do you want RS1, RS1A, RM? That would determine density. So that's, your zoning map is a regulatory tool, and the zoning ordinance is a regulatory tool, and the subdivision ordinance is a regulatory tool. So your policy documents are really your future land use map and your comp plan. Those are your policies that you adopt that says, we want to kind of be this community, and the way they link to how you get there by regulation is through your zoning map and your zoning ordinance and your subdivision ordinance. And a subdivision ordinance is simply an ordinance which governs the subdivision of a piece of land into multiple tracts. And then if you take zoning plus subdivision and you combine them, you get a unified development ordinance. And that's a very simplified overview of that. An existing land use map could say, this is how they get a little bit confusing. A good example would be, some people may know it as the Adams Farm or Preserves of Boone Creek, Current and Bull Valley Road. Right now, what's the existing land use is farmland. Okay, so the existing land use map should show farmland. The future land use map should show residential in parts of the area, and it should show commercial at the corners, because that's the way it was, the agreement was planned out. And the zoning should show RS2, RM2, and then C whatever at the corners, because that's what the agreement has in it when we annex that property. So that's how those maps relate. Now, the flip side of that is your zoning map is downtown's a good example. Is you might have a building like River Place. Before that was built was the old hospital. So that was zoned O2 office. So right now you got a building that's mixed use. So before that it was zoned O2. So the existing land use was for many years before that building went up, it was vacant land. It was zoned O2. I don't even know if we rezoned it at that point. And then the future land use was mixed use, and the zoning was C4. So, you know, they're not always, it doesn't always make sense, but your existing land uses really should be your existing conditions. Your future land uses, what do I want to see? And your zoning map is your tool of how to get there. And that falls in line with the ordinances. And to your question, Butch, about the boundary agreements, I wanted just to briefly describe, we have 5 boundary agreements. One with Ringwood, one with Bull Valley, one with Johnsburg, one with Macomb Lake, and one with Prairie Grove. Typically they're 20 years. And the boundary agreements are basically intergovernmental agreements between 2 governments, maybe 2 or more, and they're typically 20 years. So those agreements actually expire starting, I never thought I'd say this, 2019 to 2023. And they were entered into 20 years ago. So, and the reason communities enter into boundary agreements they're lines on a map for the most part saying, okay, if this property falls on this side of a line and it's not annexed to either municipality, you guys can annex it. If it falls on our side, we annex it. But then there's properties that might be, well, Chapel Hill Golf Course is a good example. You know, it was one of those properties that said, either of you could annex it, but in reality, McHenry was the best case to annex it because it's in our FPA, our facility planning area. You know, if it remains a golf course, I guess Johnsburg could annex it, it could remain a golf course on well and septic. If it's gonna develop, it's gotta be on city water and city sewer. Johnsburg doesn't have water and sewer over there, so it's gotta annex us. So there's always properties that are gonna be question marks. So to your point, Butch, what I'm recommending is that we put all those boundary lines, and besides the boundary lines, there's just a whole bunch of, no offense, Kevin, legal mumbo jumbo, of in the agreements of, you know, of how they're spelled out. And then there's a map at the end showing a line.
Right, but the other thing we gotta be concerned about is what we could zone in that.
Right, so what I'd like to do is kind of put those lines on the map and put the dates that each agreement expires, because that really impacts of how we look at this. And then you know where, kind of where the line is drawn, and we'll also know that our boundaries have changed, not a whole lot, because since 2005, I mean, we've annexed some property, but then, you know, the bottom fell out in 2008. I mean, probably Jersted's was probably the biggest, maybe.
Jerstead over on
Lincoln
Road and,
And
Old
Lincoln.
Valley Road,
And
they were gonna be
Yeah.
developing, we had a meeting where they were gonna be developing on both sides of Kern Road.
Right.
The
So
Adams Farm.
Yes.
There, yeah.
So
I
we-
remember we had that meeting there.
we'd adjust the future, the mile and a half to go mile and a half beyond that. And then we put the boundary lines on that, or boundary agreements, I'm sorry, and then,
Doug, on those boundary agreements, I'm cheating because I'm sitting next to you and I see your list, but we have two of them that are coming up shortly, right?
yeah, we have one with Ringwood that comes up in 2019, and then we have one with Johnsburg that comes up in 2019.
So not a lot of time on two of those adjacents.
Yes, and I will say the one with Johnsburg, or with, oh no, I'm sorry, that's McComb Lake. McComb Lake, we do provide sewer too.
Right.
So that's another, you know, just tidbit.
And just so you're all aware, I mean, Doug's list is Bull Valley and McCollum Lake are both up in 22, and Prairie Grove is up in 23. So I mean, none of these agreements are all too far away.
So how long does it take to renegotiate or re-enter into those agreements? Is that something like on your planner for 18 since they expire in 19, or?
It depends how, well, you see the two, what are the two big ones we don't have on that list? Wonder Lake and Lakemore. So it depends how both parties are willing to act, you know. I would love to have, I think one of those two parties would be easier than the other. And I think it behooves of the municipalities to have those agreements, because then when development, and it is coming back somewhat, to have those agreements so developers don't say, well, what are you gonna give me? Well, what are you gonna give me? You know, I think now, to your point, it's just how willing are the municipalities to work with each other? These communities we're very amenable to working with. And I think in a lot of cases, I can tell you with Macomb Lake, you know, they had a development that we had a boundary agreement that they were trying to annex a property, and we objected. They didn't realize they had a boundary agreement with us. So it could have had a very big impact. So they're probably gonna be very willing to negotiate. Prairie Grove, we have a very good relationship. Johnsburg, I think we have a very good relationship with. I mean, all these communities, I think we have good relationships with.
But
So-
we
Some
do
of them,
need to
would they
add
just
those
assume
two.
let them expire?
Oh, yeah.
Like Johnsburg, they try
They
to
could,
just let,
yeah, they could expire. I mean, I think it's in our best interest to try to go to the table and see how willing some, I mean, that could happen.
Well, they could be approached us just as well, correct? Because, I mean, they have the boundary agreement with us. I mean,
Right, it's a two-way.
Who approaches, or is it?
It does, there's no rule. I mean, it's whoever is proactive. I mean, we're going through this process. I think it behooves us to at least try to approach those communities.
Sure.
Because, I mean, we'd like to know what we're dealing with as far as in the future, wouldn't you wanna know for the next 20 years? Maybe the next boundary, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, we can have these 10 years, we can have
Say we
these.
don't have to do it.
They don't have to be 20 years.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that they're not gonna be 20 years. Because a lot of these communities, especially with smaller ones, they want the high-density development, they wanna grow, and 20 years is a long time.
So which would you just assume start on, the maps or the border agreements?
Well, I think, so what if the recommendation at the end is I would like to get the existing land use map. There's some inaccuracies on there. Like the gravel pit is industrial. I mean, really, it's,
And the parks I see are
yeah, there's parks on there.
residential 3 or something.
So I'd like to get that corrected. I'd like to overlay the existing transportation and our bike plan on and the boundary agreements with the expiration on the existing land use map, so we know what we're dealing with as a base, and get that done as soon as possible.
So in our current land use, not the future, which I think is awesome, how we've just sucked up all that land, but on the current land use, if you had to take a wild guess, what accuracy level would you call it? 80% accurate, 90% accurate?
Existing land use, you mean?
The existing land use map.
The current map.
Like Peterson Park's yellow, and that comes up, it looks like as
Oh, you mean how much is it
medium
accurate?
density,
Yeah.
single family residential, all this in the park.
Because they're in, I mean, why, do you ask because of time, because of?
No, I mean, obviously, being a logistically driven person, I get the process, but without studying that for weeks, I'm just gonna guess that it's probably 90% right, that you stay on top of the pieces that come through this commission, you stay on top of the day-to-day operations. So I would say maybe there's a 10% variant that's wrong. That's my
You
guess.
probably give me more credit than you should.
Oh, you just gave away all your cards.
You were being kind.
Yes, well, to be honest, our maps were not digitized until a few years ago. I mean, it's embarrassing, the 2005 map was literally cut and
2013.
pasted. So being in GIS, it's a lot easier to update.
Right.
So.
I think that's the issue, Sue. I think that's why we're doing this, because as much as staff has tried to keep up with the map updates,
Yep.
it was such a difficult process for so long that it just got pushed off.
You're
So,
right.
but your recommendation is to direct staff.
Right,
to
so
do
I'm
this
gonna
work.
work with HR Green, they have all these maps digitized on their system. So we're gonna go, I've circled a lot of them myself, and just say, let's make, I mean, there's categories on our existing land use map that are not on there that should be. Like, that vacant isn't on there,
Parks,
farmland, parks, water,
school.
I mean,
So I think Doug's proposal is, let's get the existing land use tightened up,
Up to
Yeah.
speed.
accurate,
And then
because
work
now
on it.
HR Green is just clicking,
Right.
right,
right? And we're not cutting and pasting and coloring for fun.
right,
We're actually making it
Real.
rendered quickly, where we can all get access to that and actually have that done, and then start to look at the future.
I agree.
and I think that document, I mean, will become much more, or the existing, and this blank map will become, and I would keep this, even though it's blank, because it's a good map just to kind of write on, but the intent is just to, these are layers, so I just turned all the layers off. So, once you have everything on one map, it's so much easier to look at everything as one picture. And you have the bike paths, the transportation, it just makes more sense. So,
And I think those are the big keys, right? If you're gonna look at future
Yeah.
use, you have to look at what fits. Do we have a way to create a traffic loop, if you will? Do we have a way to create more bike and pedestrian traffic? And then looking at those things, okay, so what would we wanna put there? If we're gonna be on this public transportation path, now I want high density, right? I mean, that's what I'm looking for. If everybody wants to move back downtown, then let's capture that. But we have to roll with those changes, and that's what hasn't happened.
yeah, so, concurrency and consistency, a lot of more progressive states have these policies, a lot of them who had them, dropped them. Real quickly, concurrency is simply, when you build a subdivision, build the improvements. We got, when the bond fell out, we had to call a bond. I never thought we'd have to call a bond, but we did. The one thing I made the recommendation, and let me go with consistency real quick. Consistency is just make sure your land use plan, your comp plan, your zoning ordinance, your subdivision ordinance, you're making this decision consistent with your plan, your zoning, and everything. So you're consistent. So one of my recommendations is let's have a consistency policy. So to your point, Sue, if we do make a change in the map in the future, because it makes sense, like we say, I don't know what we were thinking this night, but this guy's got a good point, and it meets the criteria, then we should have a policy that says amend the map if we make that change. So we're consistent. But the concurrency is really, is the infrastructure there in order to service the people? Is the sewer there? The thing with that is, I know David's office, Kevin's office gave us a public improvement completion agreement. And I think the one thing that got us in trouble that we learned the hard way was, and a lot of municipalities did, is we didn't have dates with public improvements. So we didn't say you have to have the sewer in by such date, because nobody ever thought that, Kimball Hill would go dissolve. But, so what I would say is, in adding to this consistency policy, is to have anytime we do say a subdivision comes here in the future, just for kicks, which we have jurisdictions, and that hopefully will be subdivided someday. But we should have set dates for the public improvements to be completed. Because if we don't, there's not a whole lot of recourse.
And that's the issue.
And that's a big issue.
Well, it's a big issue with the developer. You're asking the developers to front a ton of money
Well,
before they have sales.
Well,
Because
no.
you're setting
no,
a
you
deadline.
can
We
phase
can
them
future
in.
it.
You're
You can
setting a
phase them in.
deadline.
But we can future it. It doesn't, we're
No,
not saying
you
it
just
has to
said
be
you
done
wanted
now.
a specific date.
Right, but it doesn't have to be done before the development.
And it doesn't mean
We
they
just need
all have
set
to be
terms
done.
on how that works.
You can do neighborhood by neighborhood.
Okay.
What do you put a developer now, bud? I don't
That's
think
what I-
crocodile tears for the
That's what
developer.
I did for a living, so.
No,
I'm
but no.
familiar with it.
It's not, it's an agreement, so it's not saying put everything in first, because we know that's the problem we're facing now. Developers saying, we can't put your turn lane in until we sell houses, it's just chicken and an egg. So we're saying, you put phase one in first, you complete phase one, but before you do phase two, you complete phase one. So that's all I'm saying.
And I think we did that on the lot here at the end of the street. That phase one where they put the veterans building.
Yeah.
They wanted to, he wanted the option to develop phase two, but we
Right,
put some
yeah,
criteria in
yeah.
that said,
Right.
that's okay, but then you're going to have to do this.
That's a little bit different than what I heard, okay?
Granted.
Yeah, but that's a good point. I don't mean to, because it makes no sense for us to be anti-development. And because the housing drives the whole economy. And until we get it back,
The problem is now, we've not done that on any of those, so to
No, I
Doug's point on
understand,
the
but
Jurstad
that's-
development, like, we just need to set some precedents of, okay, if you're gonna do this, phase one gets done, then we need these things to
Right.
get done.
And
Right.
you got bonds and everything.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
I'd rather not call the bond if we don't have to. The last thing I have on here, so I put the boundary agreements or purpose, public input. Since the last meeting, you know, I thought a lot about it. There's a lot of unique ways. The short answer is, you know, we have to be inclusive on public input. I mean, we're going through this major shift of young, old, everybody has to be included. So with each part of this process, you know, it depends. So some suggestions I have, we're gonna use various things, newsletter, social media, you know, Survey Monkey, random sampling. There's one thing I found that was really cool that Esri has. It's basically Post-it notes on a computer that says, I want something here, and you can go on a map on a computer and say, I want to park here. And then I actually talked to a guy from Belgium that had something even better than that. So there's a lot of things you can do, but you can't exclude the person who doesn't use the computer. Focus groups, and the other thing I think we need to consider is off-site meetings. Maybe having displays at libraries. When we get into the plan document, you know, what do we want to, the text, the meat and potatoes of this stuff, having group discussions. So I think we just need to be as inclusive as possible. I mean, that's the point, I guess. So the recommendation I have at this point is really, let's get a good base existing land use map, which includes kind of everything we have now, as much as possible without making it look like a Rorschach test. And then let me come up with some kind of language about establishing a consistency policy and maybe some type of draft concurrency, public improvement. And all this will have to go for a public hearing, but this is all kind of pieces of a puzzle that will be put together. But I think as long as we keep adding on, we'll get there.
So since we're talking about timelines,
I think, you know, with the map, we'll definitely have a meeting in November. We have 2 cases, Wayne Jed being one of them. And then there's another one,
Doug, how difficult is it for HR Green, for you to get HR Green all of your changes and at least get us a first pass?
I'd like to have, before the end of this year, I'd like to have that map done.
Okay.
And
Talking about the existing map.
Yeah.
Yes, with all this stuff on it.
And I agree, I think it needs to have transportation and all of that in that, plus the boundary agreement lines. I mean, I think that definitely needs to be what we're looking at, but let's be realistic.
I don't wanna-
If we're gonna dump it on HR Green to do.
Right. I don't want to say November. I'd like to say November, but I don't want to, you know, overpromise and underdeliver.
Well, do you think we can say December 1?
I'd like to say for the December meeting and maybe get it to you before that.
Okay.
But I think for the November meeting, it might be pushing it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think we have enough time. HR Green's still gonna have to start plugging away on this.
I think I could,
And you're gonna have to give them a lot of these data. That's the problem.
well, they have a lot of it on their
Do they?
system already.
Good.
And then the second one, I could have on the November 15th meeting. So if we say the first bullet point, you know, we could try to shoot for December 1.
Or even the December meeting is fine.
Okay, December meeting, if that's acceptable to the commission.
And then the second bullet point would be for, again, we're just talking about the consistency policy, so something for us to review on that November meeting.
Yeah.
Everyone in agreement there? Do we need, this needs to be motioned and approved, or, and does this have to go to council?
I'm not, I update the council kind of what we've been doing, and if everyone is in agreement with that general thought pattern.
Do I have anyone opposed? That's fine. Joe?
Yeah, no, that sounds great. The holidays are gonna get here sooner than we know.
Right, Roger.
He just wants to watch the Cubs game.
I don't think they'll be playing in November.
No, I mean tonight.
I
Oh,
what-
tonight.
How would we identify, and correct me if I'm wrong, but over by, in Legend Lakes, where the firehouse is, and then the soccer fields and all that, that's District 15 property, correct? How would we identify that on the map? I mean, the city uses it as a park more or less, soccer
Well,
and all that.
They actually don't. Those soccer fields are just the soccer groups using it because they've got an agreement written with District 15. We use the half of the park.
We have a
that's
park,
ours.
we have a park over there. So the schools and the fire would be probably institutional,
Okay.
and then ours would be a park.
But instead of putting the schools as institutional, it might be good to put it as school property, because
Right.
that's gotta be
That's
part of
theirs.
the overall future planning.
Okay,
I mean,
it's
if
theirs.
we're growing 20,000 people, we gotta have a place to put the students, so must be nice, or might be nice
Yeah.
to know where that property is located.
we have to distinguish them somehow. Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, well, I think we have a good plan. Doug, I appreciate all the work you put into this thus far. Sue really appreciates the color maps.
Well, she'll really appreciate it with the lines drawn on it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was a good idea, color maps.
Anyone have any other questions for Doug as we're talking about like how this is gonna roll forward? So once we have that December meeting and we have an actual kind of an updated existing land use, I think the next best thing for that is obviously the holidays are gonna be here, but if we can earmark, if depending on what we have on January's agenda, would be to really focus some time on all of us in this room with this map up. We've got some new technology hanging in here to be able to see some of this stuff. And even if we're literally, trying to bring something in to see that, I think looking at the transportation and how this is going to run in the future is a big deal. The existing map has to be right first, but I think that's the biggest piece a lot of this is driven from, I went to that, Jim and I were down at the Lakemore meeting when we went through that, and one of the things that we want to see happen is our comp plan and our existing and future land maps and everything we have in place should be dictating the decisions we're making. And unfortunately, because these are dated, we're making decisions based on almost inaccurate information. So before this becomes a problem, we're hoping to kind of get this, caught up to date, so that as we're looking at these maps and making decisions moving forward, then we can work on comp plan and all of that future looking forward.
And I think, and to Sean's point, those maps should be in front of you when you have these cases. And I think the real public input begins when we have the maps and we start looking at the future land use map and we start saying, okay, we're gonna pick sector A, and that's when we're gonna start getting the public involved and saying, if you want input as to how this area wants to be in the future, now's your time. Here's our existing map, here's where the trails are, we want a good base to work off of. And these screens here might provide some help too.
We'll just replace this nice picture with
Yeah.
the map.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that'd be cool. We could do a hologram. Cause they see the TVs there, they
Yeah.
have them out there. I don't know how to work them though. Obviously you can see the sounds pretty.
Since I get everything I want, thank you for the maps. I just wanna let you know that I really like squares. So as we're redesigning our map, I really like squares.
What does that mean?
Where are you going, Sue?
Versus a rectangle
There
or
are no
what?
squares on our map. There's such odd shapes in our map, it's, funny. So,
You
I
mean
just
the map
wanted-
itself or?
Yeah, look at our map. I put mine away, can I borrow yours?
Sure.
There are no squares in here. They're all odd shaped things.
Well, we're not replatting that, right?
Spell property lines.
So, I was just
The earth is
sharing,
round.
I was just sharing that I like squares.
No.
The cornfield behind me isn't square, it's triangle. And that's the truth.
Wow. We're
Where?
definitely not
All
downtown,
seven of you
Sue.
just looked at me like, great.
Back here too.
I'm not sure what to say tonight.
Dorothy, make sure you get Sue spelled correctly in that one.
Yeah, it's on video.
Oh, it's on video, okay.
All right, anything else that we need to address this evening? And I think, Doug, we don't need a recommendation, other than us all in agreement, you have no one opposed, you're good to take that to council and let them know what it is we're looking to push forward with.
Kevin's on his head, he's great. And I keep him up to date, and the one thing that, the mayor's doing is, we submit reports every week to the council, and those reports will be sent out publicly, except for confidential stuff which we can't share, which mostly is police related, or stuff that, you know, would compromise something. Just so, you know, we make sure as many people know what's going on in the city as possible.
So that'll be public stuff.
Yeah, so this is definitely all, every time, like last time we had the meeting, I shared the summary sheet, and so the council, and they get the packet when you get it, the council does, it's on the website, so.
So they know what we're up to. right?
Yes, yep.
Okay, excellent. Item number 8, next meeting. You said we have 2 items at this point?
Yeah, one is, oh yeah, well, the one, Ron, can you chair that one?
Yeah, whenever.
Okay, good.
The 15th meeting.
Yeah, cause,
15th?
Yeah.
cause Sean's gonna have to recuse himself.
Whole meeting or just,
No, just that one case.
so we'll just, I can run the front half and then
Yeah,
when we
yeah,
introduce
whatever,
the second,
yeah.
I'll leave and you can
Sure.
handle the second
Sure.
half of it. I happen to be involved in that transaction. so.
Yeah, so Wayne's proposing he's got a contract on the old post office building downtown. So he's gotta do one of those, expanded site plan reviews. He wants to do his, heating and air, and then the, sideline marketing. So it's zone C4, the contractor's office is C5.
You do both businesses out of there?
He wants to do both out of there,
Okay.
yeah. And then the other one is, they haven't filed, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna happen. It's, for boat and RV storage over by, across from the hospital,
Oh, okay.
over in the back.
Oh, like off of Bull
Right.
Valley?
Oh, the
Yeah.
Bull Valley, I
Behind
already got
the-
storage already.
It's not a bad, it's
Back by
not,
Snowden?
yeah, we met with a guy, he's got a pretty good plan. It's definitely a need for it, so,
Perfect spot.
he's just
Nothing
gotta,
better.
I gotta give him the stuff,
So not
so.
disrupting anybody's view over there.
No. Hey, this is off topic again, but does the city have any awards to give out to businesses that really improve the community?
Yeah, well,
I
yeah,
drive by the U-Haul building every day, and that is the most improved building in this city in years. I mean, the thing is gorgeous.
Looks good, yeah, looks good.
we
They
did,
haven't busted into my building.
Sean just opened a business downtown.
I know, I saw that.
Where?
It's not as good?
I
Where?
saw the plywood. on it.
1305 Court Street.
Where's that, where the dentist was?
That was a rental house. It's a 1,200 square foot Cape Cod.
Was it
Where's
two
that?
family or one family?
It was a single.
What's the address?
Next to the dentist?
1305 Court. I'm actually on the other side of the street, so I'm on the west side of the street. Here for You's on the corner of 120.
Oh, okay.
I'm the next one up.
Oh, okay, okay.
Cool.
Yeah, by the old phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one
That was
building
the,
between the one
Shriners
you're
or
talking about in the
something,
phone building.
The Masonic Lodge
Masonic Lodge.
down the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But no, the U-Haul building is, what they've done
It
to
does
that
look great.
property.
We did actually, Dorothy and I created a business recognition program. It's kind of just a small thing to recognize businesses.
But
I would
for that,
recommend that,
we
you
have
know,
a
that-
thank you letter we're sending out on properties
Is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
that have improved.
You know what
That's
I'm
what.
Did you hear that,
that's
Bush?
what
Yeah.
Great. What?
Dorothy said that we actually have a real nice thank you letter that goes out from the city to properties that have been improved.
Oh,
like
good.
We've
So-
started to,
Yeah.
so if there are others that you're aware of, I've written that one down to send too, but if there are others, let us know, because I kinda ask the commercial inspector to let me know as things are done, what are the major things, cause I don't always see them done.
Well, they've taken an eyesore and just turned it into
Yeah.
something that's
It's
really.
really-
Sometimes it's just the matter of a parking lot.
Yeah, parking lot,
And
sign.
So we have a special letter
Okay.
we will send.
And Dorothy's actually got it where she created a letter which goes out automatically if they
To the
do, to
businesses.
businesses, if they do an improvement on their property.
Well, they've improved that property.
And it could be a side, a driveway, anything, just to say thank you.
Could it be a giant pumpkin in a lobby?
Well,
Okay, we're getting into like squares again here.
Yeah. Doug, on the U-Haul conversation, do we know,
Yes.
anything on the outlaw?
For $100, we do that every year.
Well, right now, we're trying to work with the one across the street, because right now that's a dead zone.
Yeah.
So as soon as we get the one across the street going.
Full, then you'll,
Yeah.
yeah. I was just asking with the U-Haul mention, you know, there's an outlet there at U-Haul that was kind of designated off when they made their deal. So I
Right.
just asked Doug if there was anything going on over there, but with
Oh, the
the
rumor
amount
was
of open
Panera wanted
space.
to have a drive-through over there.
That's the one I heard.
Oh, really?
Panera.
No,
Yeah,
no,
one
I
of those
think
outlets.
that, hopefully that'll happen where the Arby's is.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of, on the east side of the road, there's a lot of empty space at this point.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if there's any movement on anything over there.
Yeah, we're working with, we're putting a lot of heat on the Sears owners, a lot of heat, because the property owner to the north wants to improve their property, and there's gonna be some stuff happening up there.
Good.
They're gonna put up a new sign, and, the property to the south, we're putting a lot of heat on them because they're not playing well with others. So as soon as that starts to see stuff fill in, that outlot will fill in, because right now to retailers, that's kind of a dead area.
When's Best Buy out?
October
Oh,
28th.
God, I hate that question.
I'm sorry.
October 28th.
October
28th,
I said, no, I'm sorry, Dave.
No, it's
For
okay,
asking.
it's just knowing, it's the only information you guys, if you
Oh,
walk
they
in the
got it.
store and see the back
They got
of
it
in
the
their
store.
store.
That's actually where I got the
Went to
closing
the
day,
Geeks
was
spot.
because I went in there a couple of weeks ago with the kids.
And
The
it's
one
not
guy-
on their website.
The one guy that I actually deal with
It's in their
there,
store.
who's one of the few
On the
people
TV
that I
behind the
trust.
Geek Squad.
But if
He
you,
said that
the
the
paper
28th
said
is
it's
the
on the website, it's not even on their website, it's
Oh.
not on the management website. In fact, it says it's still there, so I gotta,
October 28th is what they've got in the store.
The employees are all been told the 28th is
Yeah.
the closing day. so-
I called them, he said, he referred me to, Best Buy Legal and Best Buy, 1-800 Best Buy.
1-800?
Yes.
All right,
Wow.
do I have a motion to adjourn?
Probably got 6.
I'll make that motion.
All right, Mr.
Second?
Thacker. I have Mr. Doherty on a second. Anyone opposed? Meeting's over.
Thank you, Kevin, appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks,
Good to
Kevin.
meet you. Thanks for coming. It's a lot of fun here with us.